We're now joined by Defence and National Security Analyst Ricardo Teixeira. Ricardo, very good evening to you. Welcome to SABC News. So we've got an interesting situation here, right? Because you've got these 5 people appearing in court over the alleged recruitment of South Africans to go participate in the war related to Russia's invasion of Ukraine almost, 3 years ago now. Yet you've got a separate issue with Zuma Sambudla, who's accused of doing something similar, but we don't yet know if the two issues are linked. Is this an indication perhaps that we're dealing with a bigger network or more than one network involved in this sort of crime?
Evening, and thank you very much for having me. Just wanted to add that the war is coming up on its 4th anniversary. It's about 3 months away now. But yes, it's indicative that there is a larger operation here. Whether it's multiple networks or one larger network has yet to be determined. That is one of the unknown knowns that we have at the moment. It could be a bigger network. It could be multiple smaller networks. We just don't know yet.
And what would have to happen then for us to be able to get to that level of understanding?
Well, we first need to see the progression of the case involving Zuma Sambudla and in this case to see if they are linked. We don't know if these individuals that were arrested were brought in through Zula's connections or what. I think we're going to have to see how this case progresses and what the Hawks are willing to tell us. But this is an alarming trend, and I think that this ties into several issues. First and foremost, we have a very high unemployment rate in South Africa, particularly youth unemployment. That is paired with Russia offering very, very lucrative cash incentives for people willing to volunteer. And that is then also toppled on top of the fact that many South Africans somehow still feel that Russia is their ally. And I would like to reiterate to any South Africans that think that this is a cause worth pursuing. Russia does not care about you. Russia does not care about anyone. And that if you end up on the front line there, you are going to be on your own.
Is that why then, Ricardo, on that point, why there are now reports doing the rounds that ultimately former President Zuma, the leader of the MKP, had apparently travelled, I'm not sure how true this is, travelled to Moscow around September to try and secure the release of those 17 men who were allegedly taken to the Donbass on a false pretext with his daughter allegedly involved to try and secure their release, but ultimately was apparently ignored at the highest levels of the Russian government and thus came home empty-handed?
Yes, I think that is very indicative about where Russia's priorities lie and how Russia feels about South Africa and South Africans, in that they did not respond to his letter, firstly, that he sent in September, which outlines that they were sent there for a very explicit and singular purpose, which is to receive advanced military training. And then that he then allegedly followed it up with an in-person visit to no success. I think that is very indicative of the fact about how Russia feels about South Africans that have ended up on the front line.
But it would make you wonder, though, about, Ricardo, what the safest route, right, would be to get these 17 men that we know of and perhaps other people who may have been lured perhaps in the same way or by a different set of people. How do you even begin to extract them when it seems no one here has a direct or is getting an audience at the highest levels of the Kremlin to get some conversation about their freedom going?
If I can jump ahead, if we assume that the Russians then heed the call and are to assist in bringing them back from the front line, there is a logistical issue to deal with here, in that the front line currently is a 20 to 30 kilometer wide no man's land where everything is covered by drone feed, and anything that moves is hit and killed. So the Russians lately, with their logistical chain, in an attempt to get things to the front line, are resorting to using pack mules and gangs of single individuals on motorcycles carrying supplies, because it's just so oversaturated with drone cover and precision fires that it is almost impossible to move up and down the front. So if Russia were to agree to bring them home, there is still the massive logistical hurdle of actually being able to extract them from the front, which is going to be incredibly difficult. And that then again assumes that Russia does have some goodwill and and would like to bring them back, which is a very big if at the moment.
Give us a sense of what you mean by an extraction from the Donbass that would be incredibly difficult. What would be the options for extraction?
Well, typically the Russians, when someone goes AWOL, they face the death penalty. If you are found going AWOL, you will be shot. The footage that I've seen of Russian soldiers that are rotating off the front line, many of them have to walk it back, literally on their own 2 feet. There's no vehicles coming out because the vehicles are priority target. So any vehicle that comes close to the front line is seen, targeted, and hit. So they would not be using any vehicles. They would quite literally have to make a run for it through a 20-kilometer to 30-kilometer wide area where everything is being seen by a drone, and they would have to use some cover and concealment, potentially some cover from the Russian side in the form of smoke. Bad weather would be a good cover, but again, they would have to come under a signals blackout, because any radio communication that indicates that they are on the move could be intercepted and could result in them being targeted.
And is there, lastly, Ricardo, any indication that these South Africans could be spared from direct involvement in fighting on the front line, perhaps occupy other military roles while they were there? And are we clearer on what this batch of suspects that was in court today is actually alleged to have done? What was their involvement, and does it differ to what's been alleged against Zuma Sambudla, for instance?
If I can be brutally honest, everybody ends up in a human wave assault at some point. That is the way the Russians are fighting the war right now. They have over 1.1 million casualties, and they've resulted on literal human wave assaults to try and break through Ukrainian lines, where they take a group of about 100, 150 personnel, a company group, and they send them in waves of 10 until ahead, wherever the furthest one makes it without being hit, holds a point. The rest will eventually try to get to them, and once a large enough group is assembled there, they will try and leapfrog forward. So it's everybody that I've heard from foreign countries, including some Americans, people from Kenya, Nepal, India, that have gone over, and they were promised that they were going to be just in the rear areas providing mechanical assistance or first aid or ammunition resupply. Everyone eventually ends up on a human wave assault because of the nature of the Russian war machine and their demand for human labor.
Ricardo Teixeira, always good to talk to you, Defence and National Security Analyst. Thank you so much for your time and being on the SABC News channel this evening.